Hello, you guys. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. I'm Madeleine Klein, and I'm here to talk about all things Canadian true crime, missing persons, mystery, and history. Today's case is really heavy. I covered it last year on TikTok in a 5-part series, and I remember I didn't make content for I think 3 weeks after that. Today we're going to be talking about the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of 8-year-old Victoria Stafford from Woodstock, Ontario. Viewer discretion is advised. This case is brutal and disturbing. Child sexual assault and murder, substance abuse, animal abuse is mentioned. Any trigger warning you can think of is probably mentioned in this video. So just after 3:30 p.m. on April 8th, 2009, 8-year-old Victoria Stafford left her elementary school in Woodstock, Ontario. She was often called Tori, so that's what I'm going to call her. And it wasn't uncommon for Tori to dawdle or play with her friends on her way home from school. But within about an hour of Tori not returning home from school, worry set in. Tori's mother, Tara, and her mother, so Tori's grandmother, set out to look for Tori. They searched playgrounds and Tori's friends' houses, and in their search, they came across a police officer in his car, and they told him, we can't find Tori. Thankfully, this police officer told them to go down to the police station and file a missing persons report. So they did just that, and at 6:04 p.m., Tori Stafford was officially reported missing. The next morning, very blurry surveillance footage is released of 2 people walking down Fife Street, a woman and a blonde little girl who is quickly identified as Tori. Tori is just walking with this person, not struggling at all, and it even looks as if she is skipping beside this person at one point, and she could very well know them. The person Tori is with is obviously a woman wearing a white coat, but it's very pixelated, so it's hard to tell really anything else. I am not sure how they did it, but they somehow got a description and a sketch from this. I guess it is Woodstock, and it's not very big. The population now being just over 40,000, so 14 years ago, I imagine it was even smaller. Anyway, this is the sketch that they could come up with, and 4 days after it was released to the public, on April 12th, Tara, Tori's mom, gets a phone call from a friend. This friend tells her the woman in the sketch is Terri-Lynne McClintic and asks, "Don't you recognize her?" Unfortunately, Tara had struggled with drug addiction in the past and had purchased oxys off of Terri-Lynne's mother, Carol McClintic, on 2 separate occasions with this friend that just phoned her. Terri-Lynne was present at the drug deal both times. However, the women did not know each other. They weren't even acquaintances. Tara immediately contacts police to tell them that the woman in the sketch is Terri-Lynne. 18-year-old Terri-Lynne McClintic had outstanding warrants on drug-related charges, so 2 days later, on April 14th, she was successfully located and arrested. The day before she was arrested, she was handing out missing persons posters of Tori. Authorities showed her the surveillance footage of Tori being lured away, and when she watched it, Terri-Lynne laughed and said, "There's no way in hell that's me." While Terri-Lynne was being held, her problematic boyfriend, 28-year-old Michael Rafferty, came to visit her, and from the video surveillance, just from her body language, you can tell this woman is just infatuated with this guy. While he's there, authorities briefly talk to Michael as well. And when they ask him about his relationship with Terri-Lynne, they ask him so are you guys boyfriend, girlfriend? He laughs and tells them, no, it's really not that serious. They didn't have any reason or evidence to hold either of them, so they were both interviewed and released. While all of this is going on, Tori's disappearance is major news and being covered heavily by media. Unfortunately, due to her history with substance abuse, Tori's mother, Tara, was heavily scrutinized. She was accused of selling Tori to pay off a drug debt and that she was high at the time of Tori's disappearance, none of which were true. Not only had Tara been on the methadone program for 2 years prior, actively trying to turn her life around, she was there when Tori was reported missing. She looked for her and went to the police station. Even with the high coverage of this case, Tori remained missing. There was a massive investigation launched, and they even brought in the Ontario Provincial Police, but there was no sign of Tori and no leads. It wasn't until 36 days later, on May 20th, 2009, Terri-Lynne McClintic went down to the police station unprompted and seemingly out of nowhere and confessed to the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of 8-year-old Tori Stafford. Terri-Lynne told investigators that Michael asked her to abduct a young female for him and would regularly ask her if she would kidnap somebody. She lured Tori to Michael's car, telling her she had a puppy. Once they reached the car, Terri-Lynne forced Tori into the back seat and sat back there with her to ensure she kept crouched and hidden. They drove to Guelph, Ontario, about an hour away, and made 4 stops. The first stop was to Tim Hortons so Terri-Lynne could get a tea. They then went to a residence where Michael went in and picked up Percocets. Then they went to a gas station to pull out money, and then to a Home Depot where Michael instructed Terri-Lynne to go in and get a box of garbage bags and a claw hammer. There is security footage of Terri-Lynne doing all of this, and she looks pretty nonchalant. After this, they get back on the road for about another hour until they're in Mount Forest, Ontario. They pulled into a secluded farmer's field, and Terri-Lynne said she had to walk away from the car while Michael brutally raped, beat, and killed Tori. This entire confession was recorded, and Terri-Lynne was crying and very emotional throughout the entire thing until the police officer left the room. The cop gets up and leaves, and Terri-Lynne's demeanor immediately changes. She stops crying and continues to drink her coffee, only continuing the charade when the cop comes back. Terri-Lynne told investigators that when Michael told her he intended to assault Tori sexually, it triggered Terri-Lynne because she had experienced the same thing when she was a child. She said she had to walk away from the car when Michael had Tori because she couldn't bear to hear or see that. Terri-Lynne had built a little bit of trust with Tori, telling investigators that Tori yelled out her name during the assault. Terri-Lynne said she went back to the car once she heard Tori's cries stop, and that's when Michael put a bag over Tori's head and took her life with the claw hammer. They then both wrapped Tori up in garbage bags and placed large rocks on top of her. Tori was gone before she was even reported missing. This was textbook premeditated murder. These two went as far as to bring a change of clothes. Immediately after leaving the scene, they went and washed the car and even cut parts of the upholstery out. Not to mention the prior stop at Home Depot for bags and a hammer. If that's not meticulous planning and a major cover-up effort, I don't know what is. The two then made the 2-hour drive back to Woodstock, and Terri-Lynne went home and got high with her mom. Terri-Lynne's confession was enough to arrest Michael Rafferty, and when he's being questioned, he denies. He denies till he dies. He tells investigators Terri-Lynne is a liar, he didn't do anything, And he actually maintains his innocence to this day, but we'll come back to that later. So we have a confession, but we still don't have a body. Terri-Lynne tries to help police find where Tori was, but she couldn't remember exactly where they had went. She drew a vague map, and they did conduct a search of the area that she drew, but found nothing. Police then looked into Michael's cell phone records and noticed that his phone pinged off of a tower in Mount Forest, Ontario, the day Tori went missing. Mount Forest was just north of their original search. On July 19th, 2009, 102 days after Tori went missing, a police officer assigned to the case searched a farmer's field on a hunch because it matched the description of what Terri-Lynne gave. And lo and behold, there he found the decomposing body of 8-year-old Victoria Stafford. Autopsy reports show that, in addition to the blows to the head that ultimately took her life, Tori suffered from lacerations to her liver and multiple broken ribs. That means Tori was brutally assaulted and beaten. Lacerations to the liver and multiple broken ribs could be fatal injuries themselves. It would take 3 years for Terri-Lynne and Michael to go to court, and when they did, Terri-Lynne sat down on the stand and changed her story. She would say that Michael took part in the sexual assault of Tori, but she was the one to kidnap and ultimately kill her. In a conversation between Terri-Lynne and Michael, it's alleged that she told him she would, quote, take the fall while trying to caress his face. And he just looked at her and scoffed and said, you'll do anything for a little bit of love. Terri-Lynne is a vile person, but that is so sad. Let's talk about Terri-Lynne a little bit. She had a horrific childhood and was failed by the system years before Tori was even born. Another child slipping through the cracks directly correlates with Tori's eventual murder. In 1990, Terri-Lynne was born to a woman who worked as a stripper and didn't want her. So she gave her child to a coworker. The woman who took Terri-Lynne in, Carol McClintic, had 2 biological children of her own that had been previously taken away. Carol had a long-standing history of drug and alcohol abuse, having numerous men in and out of the many houses they lived in. This extremely high-risk lifestyle resulted in Terri-Lynne being abused in every way imaginable. Physically, sexually, psychologically, emotionally. It's baffling Carol was allowed to legally adopt this child, having 2 already out of her care. Carol and her half-sister suffered through the same kind of childhood that Terri-Lynne did, but fortunately, Carol's sister managed to break the cycle. It was Carol's half-sister that took her children in after they were removed from Carol's care, and it was her half-sister that would call CPS when Carol got a hold of this new baby. She told them Carol is not capable of taking care of anything. But this report apparently fell on deaf ears because nothing was done. The domino effect of generational trauma and a broken system is devastating. I am in no way excusing or defending Terri-Lynne's actions. Her upbringing is not an excuse, only an explanation. Terri-Lynne started using hard drugs with her mom during her early teens and has a history of violence, admitting to once putting her dog into a microwave. Although I believe Terri-Lynne was taken advantage of by Michael, I also believe they are both sociopaths. Her crocodile tears during her confession and the way she changed her story 4 years later on the stand. Michael was found to be in possession of child porn and snuff films on his computer. He has a history of drug use and violence, being described as manipulative his entire life, a serial cheater in relationships, and at one point convincing his girlfriend to become an escort and then living off of her. Both of these people are just absolutely awful. I think what happened was Michael saw and took advantage of Terri-Lynne's need and want for love and showed her a little bit of affection and attention that she had never received before. She became infatuated with him, in turn normalizing or trying to justify his innermost wants and desires, like kidnapping a child and committing rape and murder. Was she trying to impress him? Was she the ringleader? Was it Terri-Lynne that selected, lured, kidnapped, and murdered Tori Stafford? A very frustrating part of this case is we still don't know exactly what happened. But thankfully, it took the juries no time at all to sentence both these losers to life in prison. Michael has no chance of parole for 25 years, and Terri-Lynne has no chance of parole for 15. So Michael is eligible for day parole in 2031 and full parole in 2034. For Terri-Lynne, I read that she wasn't eligible for parole until 2031. But then I read that she was eligible for parole in 2024, which is next year. So I wonder if she's eligible for just day parole next year? Or if maybe they're counting the 3 and 4 years between crime and trial? I don't know. Either way, our justice system is super broken because there have been a ton of bumps in the road along the way. In 2018, Terri-Lynne decided she's Indigenous and applied to be transferred to a healing lodge in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. And she was accepted. She's not Indigenous. She was transferred to the healing lodge just 8 years into her sentence. Thankfully, Tori's father, Rodney Stafford, was and continues to be a huge advocate for justice for Tori and other families affected by violent crime. When he was notified Terri-Lynne was transferred, he staged a protest and even met with Trudeau to have the decision reversed and Terri-Lynne sent back to a maximum security facility. And it worked. After hearing about the callousness and brutality of her crime, Trudeau actually asked no more details be read out loud. So they were like, yeah, if the crime is too grotesque to be talked about during a public inquiry, the perpetrator should probably be behind bars. Like I said, thankfully she was sent back to prison, but both Terri-Lynne and Michael would eventually be moved to medium security facilities without meeting the criteria to do so. Terri-Lynne was far from a model prisoner and was often involved in altercations. Michael has never admitted guilt, which is a requirement to be transferred, but he's never admitted anything. Still, he was transferred and took advantage of his mom, who maintained his innocence. He extorted $30,000 out of her over the years. She ended up dying of a heart attack in 2018 at 60 years old after losing her house and everything she had because of Michael. When she was unable to send Michael anything in prison, he would approach his grandmother, his mom's mom, who also died shortly after his mother did. The rest of the family believe he is fully responsible for the deaths of his mother and grandmother, and I can't say I blame them. Stress kills, man. It is a proven fact. Anyway, he was never moved back to a maximum security facility, even after his own family wrote letters saying he didn't meet the criteria and broke rules. On the day Michael Rafferty was sentenced to life in prison, he was asked if he wanted to make a statement to the court. He said directly to Tara McDonald, Tori's mother, quote, "If you want the missing pieces, then you can talk to me about it," unquote. Michael appealed his conviction immediately after sentencing, so it took 3 years, but Tara McDonald finally got to speak to Michael and get some of her questions answered. This is called restorative justice, and this allows victims and families of the victims to talk to their victimizers. Tara McDonald applied to do restorative justice with Michael Rafferty at the same time Terri-Lynne applied to do restorative justice with Tara. Tara declined to speak to Terri-Lynne, and I can't say that I blame her. Anyway, during this restorative justice, Michael told Tara that he didn't have as much involvement as she and everyone else thought. Regardless of how much involvement he had in this cruel and despicable crime, he was still involved. And both of these pieces of trash deserve to rot in prison forever. I said earlier, Terri-Lynne is eligible for parole after 15 years, and if they count time served, that's next year in 2024. I really hope neither of them see freedom ever again, because what they did is unthinkably evil. I guess all we can do is wait and see. It has been alleged to me in my TikTok comments that Terri-Lynne walks around the prison like she owns the place, or at least used to. To my knowledge, Terri-Lynne remains at the Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario, and Michael remains at a facility in Quebec for sex offenders. I'm not about to try and say the name. I'm just going to embarrass myself. So that is the devastating and disturbing story of Tori Stafford. All I can say is I really hope our justice system doesn't let us down on this one. These people should never see the light of day again. They remind me kind of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. I'll never forget when that trial was going on in 1998. I was 5 and my mom was telling me about it. And she looked at me and said, "You can't even trust women." And that's really stuck with me because up until that point, I think I just had like an automatic trust for other women. I am so lucky my mom was so real with me when I was young. That is just the ultimate betrayal. Women betraying women like that. Ugh. Anyway, I'm gonna go lay down. That was a lot. I'm gonna link a couple things below as always. I'm gonna link a 2-part docu-series. I don't know if that's the right word to call it, but it's called Crime Beat. I think it premiered on Global. It's 2 parts, super informative. I got a ton of my information from it. I'll have my link tree down below as well if you are moved to follow me on any of my socials or check out any of my other content. That is it for me for today. Thank you all again for being here. I appreciate you so much. I will catch you guys 1 week from today. Toodles!